This thing is at least as good as a regularly productive human in 50% of cases.
You can give it your credit card to buy things for you, but they pretty much said, maybe you shouldn't.
Welcome to the AI Argument.
Welcome indeed. Frank Prendergast here, joined as ever by Justin Collery to argue about all of the latest AI news. And there is some seriously hot off the presses AI news.
Frank, just before you get into that, I know before we came on air that you said that you were a bit fuzzy-brained. So I've got a little thing that I've been thinking about all week, just to maybe crank the brain into before we go in and talk about the news, right? So know there's this theory. So the big thing for the last couple of weeks has been the era of experience that AI models, before we get to ASI, they're going to have to develop truly world models, right, to understand the world, right? Now, I should be trying to sort of channel my inner, Mark Cox, not Mark Cox, the guy on the BBC who does all the science documentaries. So he used to be in D-Ream. He used to be in the band D-Ream years ago. He's a good guy. Anyway, okay. So, there's this theory, right, that a lot of the AI labs, Elon Musk, in fact, subscribe to, which is, if you can imagine that the compute power is getting more and more and more, right, better and better. We're getting more and more compute power all the time. And within these computers, we create simulations of the real world, right? But they're just simulations. At some point, those simulations will become so realistic that it's impossible to tell between those and the real world. And we'll have millions of those simulations. And therefore, mathematically speaking, we live in a simulation, not in the real world, because there's only one real world and lots of simulations. Part of the thing that's troubled me about that whole thing is, why would we make the simulations? Right? Why would we do that? Because,
have you seen The Matrix?
It's the Matrix story, right? But now I was out for a walk this week, and I was thinking about, maybe we don't live in a simulation created by us. Maybe we live in an AI's imagination, an AI that is simulating the real world in order to get real world experience. And therefore, we are just stardust in the imagination of the dreams of an AI, in my favorite, whatever his name is, Cox voice. There you go. That's my thought, my deep thought for the week.
And I'm sorry, how does this relate to me being brain dead? Is this like is this part of the has part of the AI's has one of its processing units gone down or something?
It might kickstart your brain if you start thinking about it. You go, oh, and it might just get the brain going a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a high probability that we live in a simulation, because I frequently come across, I'll be scrolling social media and somebody be like, oh, look at this really cute animal. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to remember any of the animal names, but I'll see this really cute animal. I'll think, well, that's AI generated, because I've never seen that animal before. There's no way that animal exists. And then I Google it, and it's real, and it's been on the planet all the time. But how have I never come across it? I think those kinds of things are just glitches in the Matrix,
Well, there we go. Well, speaking of the Matrix, we have OpenAI released a new model just last night, not even 12 hours ago. What do you think?
What do I think? Well, first of all, I don't think, was this on anybody's radar? I mean, I know people were saying it was going to be a browser. I know people were saying it was going to be GPT-5. There was all kinds of theories, but I did not see any theories that it was going to be an agentic solution. And it essentially looks like, say, Manus. So Manus is the Chinese company. It's built on Anthropic's Claude. And you can basically give it a kind of high-level task, and it breaks it into subtasks and tasks and goes off and does it. And that's basically now what is going to be within ChatGPT. It's called ChatGPT Agent, and it will go off and it will do these jobs for you, using a mix of what they kind of said was their deep research kind of mixing their deep research technology with their operator technology. Operator is where ChatGPT can use a computer for you and browse the internet. Not on Plus plans, but if you're paying $200 a month, you have access to Operator. So now they've merged these two things together and given us Agent. So in the demo, they did things like, they said, look, we've been invited to a wedding. Here's the wedding invitation. Go off and figure out what hotels we could stay in, what suits we could wear, buy us a pair of shoes and figure out a gift for the couple. All basically, all they did was give it the website invitation to the wedding, and ChatGPT agent goes off, checks the dates of the wedding, looks up the couple, figures out what they're interested in, what kind of gift would be good, etc., etc. So absolutely fascinating. I don't know what I would use it for or be comfortable using it for. What about you?
Very interesting. I was waiting for you to get to that point, right? So, super interesting, because one of the other stories we were going to talk about this week was the fact that OpenAI have been super quiet for the last month, right? This has been the least hyped release from OpenAI ever, like ever. So OpenAI on Twitter and all their other social media platforms normally push out 1, 2, 3, 4 messages every single day. They released this model yesterday, and up until yesterday, if they were even pushing out a message a week, it was like the amount of social media outlook has collapsed. And I was joking, right, saying that maybe Meta had hired their social media people for 200 million a year. That's why they weren't pushing out any more social media posts. But what's very interesting to me is exactly the chatter that I'm seeing mostly reflects exactly what you've just described. Mostly, right? But buried in the release, there was 2 other factoids, which I'm amazed that OpenAI didn't make more of. The first is humanity's last exam. This is the exam that's made by PhD students and was supposed to be the last exam, right? It's the most difficult test, apparently, or one of the most difficult tests out there. And I mean, I can't remember the exact numbers, but like Claude 4, right? Opus, their biggest, baddest one, gets, I think, 12 or 16%, or that sort of level, right? The highest, maybe it was 16 actually. And before that, the best was 8%, and that was O3, right? And then Grok came out recently, and they got 41% or something like that. This model, 41% on humanity's last exam. Did you see a big song and dance about it? No. Didn't see a big song and dance about it. Guess what else, right? They have these benchmarks internally for use of Excel, use of Word, use of these basically applications which would be used by office workers. And they say that in their internal evaluations, the average human gets about 80% in these things. This particular model gets about 50%, right, in the ability to use this. So what they've said is, look, at this thing is at least as good as a regularly productive human in 50% of cases. Right. So not yet as good as you or me or anybody else, but getting there, right? Much, much better. I think it's a factor of 5 better than the previous response. Now, here's where I come to the kicker, right? What is OpenAI's definition of AGI, and what's the implication of them declaring it? OpenAI's definition of AGI is when it's as good as the next best human at all economically valuable work. When that happens, the deal with Microsoft is over. I wonder, is this the start of a play? They're sort of soft launching their AGI claim to say, here, look, we've got a benchmark that, you got humanity's last exam over here, and you've got a benchmark which is, the use of what most office workers do. They use Excel, they use email, stuff like that. This thing beats humans in humanity's last exam, and it beats humans in office work. Therefore, this is AGI. See you, Microsoft. Goodbye. I wonder, is there something, and I wonder, is it like they're not hyping it? It's so un OpenAI like. I just wonder, is there more to it?
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I watched the live stream. I don't know if you saw the live stream, but it struck me that it was, and maybe I was reading in too much to it. So I'd love to know what other people think, but I felt like there was something oddly strained and oddly understated about it. And I couldn't put my finger on it exactly or what it was, but their live streams have tended to be very kind of very casual, very chilled. They have that kind of like friends, just like, oh, we just want to invite you into our living room and look at this amazing tech we've created. And I don't know, it just felt there was something very odd about the live stream that I couldn't put my finger on. And I even thought it was odd, as you say, like they did say, I think they said this is the most powerful model that we've built, but they said it in such a kind of a casual, under the radar kind of way. I was like, what's going on here? There's something odd going on here, that they're just kind of casually going, yeah, it's what did I mean, I suppose Sam Altman did open with what has now become a meme, where he was saying, we have a real banger for you today. But it was like, I watched an hour of, or sorry, there was a half an hour. So it was right at the end. They just kind of casually said, yeah, it's the most powerful model that we've built. I was like, wait, shouldn't you have led with that?
Yeah.
And
It's weird. It's weird. They also actually have to have a go at you with this one, right? But anyway, they have this threat level that they release with each of their models, and they've said this one is the most dangerous, which I always joke, because Anthropic did the similar thing with their last model release, and it reminds me of this restaurant that I used to go to in Pittsburgh, where before you could get the hot chicken wings, they made you sign a disclaimer to say that these chicken wings were so hot that they might cause you a heart attack, and it was just a marketing thing, And I'm like going, well, they're just saying it's the most, this could cause, somebody to make a nuclear bomb. It couldn't. There's loads of other stuff that you need in order to make a nuclear bomb, or in order to make this is for biohazards and stuff like that. And it's funny, right? And I just take a little detour, and then we'll come back to OpenAI, right? But there was 2 studies released this week. There was one where a lab had basically hooked a machine learning model, so not a Gen AI model. It hooked a machine learning model up to an automatic lab for creating new materials. And what this meant was you could create new materials 10 times faster. And this comes back to David Silver's experience, or era of experience. So what you have is, you've got a machine learning model which comes up with a hypothesis, creates a material, produces the material, tests the material, and feeds that back into the machine learning model. And that's a recursive process. So it's much, much faster creating these new materials. That's not anywhere mentioned in your beloved EU AI Safety Act. But I can tell you that is way more dangerous than the generative AI that OpenAI released yesterday, because, we're going to use it to make solar panels and good stuff, right? But a baddie could use exactly the same technology to say, here, make me a gun that can't be detected in a metal detector, or make me a bomb which can't be detected. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of materials. That was one. There was another one, right? Just one more.
Go on.
Go on, yeah, push back, and I'll have another go at you.
Well, I would push back by saying that I would think that they would be very heavily regulated. Now, under the EU AI Act, I think that the lab that you're talking about was a research lab, and so they would be exempt to a certain degree unless they commercialized. But I mean, if that lab was in Europe, they would be regulated, and I think for exactly the reasons that you're talking about, that's a very good thing, and that they would have to have all kinds of safety procedures in place and have documented how it could actually be potentially used for less positive in less positive ways.
The part of the AI Act that sort of made me go, I think they've missed the point here, is where it's got to be whatever it is, 10 to the 15 teraflops. And if it's more than 10 to the 15 teraflops, then you have to report this particular model, because it constitutes an existential risk. And the point I'm making is, it doesn't have to be 10 to the 23 teraflops. It can be a really small model hooked up to a real world lab that through reinforcement learning makes stuff better and better. And that's far more dangerous, and it's a much smaller model than your big 10 to the 23 teraflops model. That's the problem. Let me give you another example before we go back to OpenAI, because this is cool. So there's a team. So one of the issues, hundreds of millions of people, Frank, every year die because of drug-resistant diseases, right? So you're in hospital, you get sick, they give you paracetamol, or they give you penicillin, and this thing has learned how to become immune to penicillin. So what this team are doing is they're using a machine learning model to analyze snake venom in order to identify what would you call it, proteins, or basically molecules within the snake venom, which are dangerous to us but don't kill us. Right? So they'll make you a little bit sick, but are totally toxic to these particular biodes, or whatever it is that's in your body that will kill you. And they found, within a day, they found 400 of them, 400 candidates. Right? They're doing fantastic, brilliant use, right? But if I was a baddie, I would use exactly the same technology to just find which toxins we want to distill. right? It's
Yeah.
every technology is dual use. And again, your beloved AI Safety Act would not deem that to be of sufficient risk to be reported to the authorities, even though it's actually far more dangerous than your 10 to the 23 Gen AI teraflop thing.
Well, I take your point about the size of the model, and it's an interesting point. But I would still use your examples as being very good examples of why it's so good that Europe has a regulatory approach to things, and that things like dual use. I mean, I think that I don't know if they're covered under the EU AI Act, but we certainly have regulations that would very much cover those kinds of situations in labs and ensure that they were very well documented and had extremely stringent record keeping and safety practices in place. So I in a way, I see this as a kind of a yes, go the EU for regulating all kinds of harmful things. even if we get it wrong, from time to time, and even if with an emerging technology they may have missed the mark in several areas of the EU AI Act, I completely accept that.
Let's circle back to OpenAI, because another very interesting thing happened, and I wonder, is this also a reason why OpenAI were muted? So there was a coding and math competition that was held in Japan this last week, and OpenAI liked to be number one. And in this particular coding and math competition, they came second. They came number two. But what was interesting about this particular coding and math competition, I didn't even take a note of it, but it was a long horizon problem. So this was a coding and math problem that went on for 10 hours. So it was a task that took 10 hours, and everybody had 10 hours to solve this problem.
Right.
And it was a bit like a Go board. And you could put little, and there was dots on it, and you could put walls on this, and you had a collection of dots, and you had to basically move all the dots from one place to another. It's of the order of Go in terms of complexity. The OpenAI model way out was in front right up until the last hour of the competition, and then one particular programmer who happened to previously work at OpenAI actually just pipped OpenAI at the very end. Right. This is interesting because it hints that OpenAI have a model that learns on the fly. This isn't the type of problem where you can keep all of the combinations in the context window. It isn't the type of problem where, it's the type of problem where you're able to try something, see that it doesn't work, learn from that, and then try again. A bit like learning a game of chess or a game of Go. And OpenAI appear to have some technology in that front. And again, I just wonder, is it that they didn't come first, that they didn't talk about it? Or is it that they don't want to talk about this area? Are they burnt by what happened with the reasoning models? So they released the reasoning models, and 3 or 4 months later, open source had totally caught up with what they'd done. And is it the case that in this time they've got a new paradigm or another way of applying that paradigm, and they just don't want to broadcast what they've done because they realize that once the genie is out of the bottle, 3 months later, everybody's got it. So loads of theories as to what's going on.
So in terms of that maths competition, are you saying we don't know what model they were actually using to do it?
Yes, they were evasive. They just said it's our latest model. They didn't say which model. They didn't say it was released.
Interesting. And do you think there's any possibility that it was the underlying model of ChatGPT agent, or you think it was something else?
Nobody knows. That's the interesting thing. And I just wonder if it had won, right, would they have said, oh yeah, this is the model that we used in the competition that just won this thing, and it didn't win. So they're kind of like, okay, we've got to pull that. It came second. It's not, we don't do second, we do winning.
Yeah. But to go back to your earlier point, you mentioned about the marketing technique of saying, oh, this is really dangerous.
Yes.
Which, it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult to gauge that. And, I suspect there may well be a little bit of that going on across all the labs. But at the same time, they mentioned on the live stream a very, very simple and real danger with something like ChatGPT agent, because they mentioned that because it can now browse the web itself using a browser, it's much more prone to things like prompt injections. And they said they've done everything they can to try and safeguard against it, but they are not confident that somebody won't be able to jailbreak it via prompt injection. And so they, they very much said, you can give this thing your credit, you can give this thing your credit card to buy things for you, but they pretty much said, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should just wait and let it ask you to enter your credit card details yourself to make the actual purchase.
Totally don't be giving it your personal private information, right? That's without a doubt. Not now. But I will say, here's an interesting thing, right? Google, remember when Gmail came out first, one of the reasons that you would get Gmail was because they were really good at spotting spam. Now, it turns out that if you are a big email provider, it gets much, much easier to spot spam, because just look for the emails that go to everybody, and then you go, all right, that's spam, kill it. So if you have a model that everybody uses and an agent that everybody uses, it becomes easier to spot the prompt injections and the whatever, because you just monitor the usages. You monitor when people go, oh, I was just ripped off, and then you model to say, okay, watch out for those types of things and don't let those happen again. So, early adopters are going to get, people like you and me, right, are going to, even though you're told, don't put in your personal information, don't do this, right, you can't help yourself. Let's be honest. Go on, buy me some shoes. Let's see what happens. Right? And you're gonna, if you're me, right, you're gonna set up like a temporary credit card, and you're gonna give it the details of the temporary credit card. Sure. You're gonna put, 30 euros on it and say, go have at it, right? And you'll get ripped off, and you'll go, well, that was fun. That's
sure.
worth 30 quid, but it's not ready for prime time yet. But look, exciting times. Hopefully we can all get to try it out soon. I presume because we're in Europe, we'll have to wait, 5 to 10 working days.
Yeah, they didn't mention the geographic thing in the live stream. I'll be curious to see. They just said it was coming, that Plus would have it first, Pro would have it first, and then Plus and Teams would get it.
Listen to me. There was a couple of other releases this week that we want to talk about. So one of them which caught your eye was Perplexity's Comet, which is a new browser that they've released.
Yeah, and it's not entirely different to ChatGPT's agent in a way. Like you can do basic things, like it's an AI native browser, so you can chat away with AI as you browse, but you can also kind of hand over browsing to the agent and have it do stuff for you. So again, not a million miles away. Obviously, it's not as capable a model, because Perplexity don't have their own models. They're using the models of people like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, etc. But it's just interesting to see that everyone's kind of moving in this direction. But again, I mean, the article that I read was saying they'd used it for 48 hours. They couldn't understand why it might be good, but after 48 hours of using it, they were kind of hooked on it. I have to admit, I haven't tried it. It's again, you have to be paying $200 or $300 a month, I think, to get access to it, unless you're a journalist or somebody on a very small list of testers.
Something jumped out at me, right? And we got like 7 minutes to wrap this puppy up, right? So something jumped out at me in the article, and it leads us directly into another story, right? So in that article, right, they said it doesn't feel natural to write a request prompt to AI and then continue doing something else. So at first, I find my time at Comet far slower than I had imagined. I was asking the assistant to complete tasks and then monitoring the AI as it proceeded to do what I asked. It wasn't until I started to force myself to move on with my life, leaving Comet to its own devices, that something truly clicked. You see, I could easily do most of the things Comet is capable of doing my own, and faster. But Comet is capable of booking restaurants. But until I learned to let it do it itself, it didn't actually save me any time. Right? So that was interesting to me because of the second story that jumped out in your and you'll see why. So you had another story to do with coding agents, and people saying the coding agents didn't make them any faster.
Yeah. So the quick synopsis is that they gave a coding assistant to expert coders working in code repositories that they were well used to, and they asked the developers, how much time do you think this will save you? And they estimated, it's probably going to save about 25% of my time. Then they had them use the code assistant, and then they said, okay, how much time do you think it did save you now that you've used it? And they said, oh yeah, I think it saved about 20% of the time. When they crunched the numbers, the developers had been 19% slower, not faster, slower. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so I dug into this, right, to figure this was why I was so interested. So I dug in to see what was going, because professionally I'm very interested in this as well. And the people who participated in the study explained why they were 20% slower. They basically said exactly the same thing. Where the guy here that was using Comet said that he would get Comet to do something and then watch it, right? And even though he could do the same thing himself easily and faster, he found it difficult not to just watch it doing its thing. The developers found exactly the same issue with the coding agents, right? So they would tell the coding agent to go off and do something. And actually, the guy said, look, I couldn't help myself. I'd just pick up my phone and I'd start browsing social media, or I'd do something instead of using the time to go on and do another task. And so it's a trust issue, right? Until you get to the point where you can tell the agent to do something and not worry about it and just go, right, that's looked after, and go on and work on something else, it's not going to make you any more efficient. If you tell it to do something and watch it, well, then you're just wasting time because you're sitting watching it.
But no, I thought I read somewhere that they did spend a lot of time. So it saved them time on doing the actual task, but then they had to spend a lot of time like reviewing the code and fixing bugs. Was that not true?
In some instances, that is true, but there's an awful lot of variability around that because there's scaffolding and there's ways that you set it up and there's all that sort of stuff. But when you actually, the people themselves that were involved in the study, they said, look, at the headline itself was disingenuous. In reality, if you used it and you trusted it, it would save you time. But just we weren't used to using it. We were. In fact, the way they described it, we were novices to the tool. And as you got more used to use, exactly the same as the guy with the Comet browser said, once you got used to using the tool, then yes. But it's a trust issue. Like it's like what do you call that leap of trust? That thing where you gotta fall back into somebody's arms.
Yeah. Just let the AI catch you is your advice.
Yeah. Listen to me. Nature abhors a vacuum, and because OpenAI have decided not to release any social media content for the last 3 weeks, Grok and Elon Musk have thankfully stepped into the breach.
Yeah. I think we need a new. We're going to just have to have a new regular segment on the show. What is Elon up to?
He's brilliant. Can I just tell you, my favorite thing about you this week is the expanded service area for the Tesla taxi in Dallas.
Oh my!
So for those that don't know, if you go to Dallas, Texas, you can get a Tesla taxi, which is the same as a Waymo. It's got no drivers, but they're geo-fenced. So that as long as you're going within the geo-fenced area, it'll take you there. They were harping on this week about how they'd increased the size of the geo-fenced area that the Tesla taxi could now serve, and they put it in the shape of a male member. And I'm not even joking. And Elon Musk was joking about it on Twitter. They're not a serious company. I mean,
almost. What on earth? I mean, I looked at it and you told me about it, and I was like, that just can't be true. And I opened it up, and there you go. It is undeniably a penis on the map. And I was like, surely not. It cannot be true. And I saw some people saying, no, it's an upside down Tesla logo.
No.
No, because why? If you're going to do that, why would you do it upside down? That wouldn't make any sense. No, it is definitely a penis. And it is what on earth? What is Elon up to? Like Waymo also expanded the boundaries of theirs, and they didn't do some crazy shape. They did it to the boundaries of the whatever they are, the city limits boundaries that are actually on the map. And then not only that, but Grok also released these AI companions, and one of them is how do you even describe it? I mean, it's basically kind of
burlesque, an anime burlesque dancer, would be the way that I would describe it.
Or a hentai character, the sexual graphic novels that they have in Japan. It very much looks like that kind of thing, and well, it is very much that kind of thing because she's wearing she's wearing a suggestive outfit, but she's wearing a dress. But apparently, the more you talk to her and the better you get on with her, she will then basically disrobe for you down to her undergarments.
One of the headlines I did not expect to see on Rolling Stone magazine ever was Grok rolls out pornographic anime companion, lands Department of Defense contract. That's the headline. I'm not even joking.
Is this the company that you want the AI of controlling Department of Defense products, machinery,
Kill him with
weapons?
kindness. Kill him with kindness, Frank. It's the sort of war I want to fight.
What on earth? What on earth? Words fail me. Words fail me. Other than what is Elon up to, and how does he get away with it, and how do you land a contract like that when your AI has features like this and behaves the way it does in terms of what we've seen about referring to itself as Mecha Hitler, etc.
And not only that, but another one that you pointed out to me this week was when you ask it any political question, it will first go and search what Elon Musk thinks about said political question before then giving you an opinion as to what the answer is to the political question.
Yeah, and not even, we don't even have to jailbreak it to find out. It's right there in the chain of thought reasoning. Oh, they've asked me about something. I'm going to go and check what Elon Musk thinks about this. I mean, did they hard code that into the system prompt? I don't know. What on earth?
Normally we've got a funny story to end the AI argument. This week's funny story is Grok. That's it. That's the funny story. And Elon Musk. It's just the strangest thing. Wow. Frank, it's been a pleasure, as always. 30 minutes goes by faster than I can ever possibly imagine. I look forward to arguing with you again next week.
I will chat to you next week. No doubt we'll have loads more to argue about. Cheers, Justin.
Take it easy.